What's going on, guys? Jake Peffer here. Welcome back to Jake's Cinema Room. Today is Halloween 2022, and what better way to celebrate the day than to go through the entire Halloween franchise and give you my rankings of all 13 movies. This ranking will include Halloween 3, which I know isn't technically connected to any of the other movies in the series. However, it is always lumped in with all the movies in the Halloween franchise, mainly because it is technically a Halloween movie, so I will be including it in my rankings. Just want to go ahead and put out there, this is all my personal opinion. If you have differing opinions or you think, a certain movie's better than the other, totally fine. Comment, let me know what your rankings are, and we can discuss and all that kind of stuff. Also want to put out there that there will be some minor spoilers. Only want to put that out there because when I get to some of the newer movies, especially like Halloween Kills and Halloween Ends, I might talk about them a little bit more in depth. And if you haven't seen them, I just want to give you guys a heads up. So let's get on to it. Coming in at number 13, we have Halloween 5, The Return of Michael Myers. This is without a doubt my least favorite movie in the series. And rightfully so. I mean, it's a very lazy, boring entry in this franchise. It undoes one of the best endings in the series from part 4, where you have Jamie killing her stepmother and basically taking on the persona of Michael Myers. And it's awesome. Halloween 4 has such a great ending. And then Halloween 5 just says, you know what? Forget that. We're going to do this other thing and make a terrible movie and have one of the lamest Michaels in the entire franchise. You basically regulate Danielle Harris as Jamie to not speaking throughout the entire movie, so there's just not really much for her to do. They kill off her stepsister, who was one of the better characters from part 4, and they give you her friend Tina, who is just absolutely annoying. You have the 2 police officers that are incredibly annoying. They have their goofy music that plays throughout, and this one ends with such a thud with the whole Man in Black releasing Michael Myers from prison, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, this one, without question, the worst in the series. Let's move on. Coming in at number 12, we have Halloween 6, The Curse of Michael Myers. I know a lot of people put this one generally at the bottom, or at least in their bottom 3, and rightfully so, it is in my bottom 3. It's right along with 5. It's boring. There's not a whole lot going on here. You have the whole mythology of Michael Myers and this cult of people and whatnot, and it just gets all convoluted, and really, who could care less? The only bright positive is this is the first movie of Paul Rudd's career. Despite him not really giving a great performance, he plays Tommy Doyle in the movie, and that's at least something. At least we got him out of this movie. Unfortunately, it is Donald Pleasance's last film, and he doesn't really get a whole lot to do in this movie either. It's definitely one to skip in the series. 5 and 6, whether you want to put them last or second to last, they are without question the worst 2 in the franchise. Moving along, at number 11, I have Rob Zombie's Halloween Part 2. This is one that is very divisive, as are both of the zombie movies. This one just did not work for me at all. I remember seeing it in the theater back in 2009, and every time I've tried to revisit it since, it's just never really clicked with me. It actually starts off pretty well with the first about 20-25 minutes, and then you find out that all of that is a dream or a nightmare, whatever, for the Laurie Strode of this series. And it's like, well, then why was I watching all that cool stuff that just happened in the first 25 minutes and all of it was just a dream? Like, really? That's what we're going with here? And it does a lot of weird things throughout this movie. I absolutely can't stand the ending of it. There's a couple of decent parts here and there. Danielle Harris, who does come back in the zombie movies to play Annie, when her character eventually gets killed, and Brad Dourif as Sheriff Brackett coming in and finding her dead. That is actually a pretty heartbreaking scene. Something that this and the other zombie Halloween movie could have used a little bit more emotion. which I think this definitely lacks a bit of. But all in all, it's just a pretty forgettable movie in the series, and I just don't think it really has a whole lot going for it. Now at number 10, I have Halloween Resurrection, which was the 8th movie in the original continuity, if you even want to call it that. This is the one with Busta Rhymes, who I have to say is the only saving grace of this movie. And I know some people are probably going to hate me for saying that, but honestly, when you watch this movie, he's the only person that actually is at least trying. None of the other characters are at all interesting. And even though his performance isn't really good or anything, he's at least putting in the effort. You have a stupid subplot with Ryan Merriman where he and the main girl kind of have this back and forth going on where they're talking on their Palm Pilots, and he is absolutely useless, him and his friend, because they really aren't connected to the plot in any way. And it's like, why is this story here other than at the end when he kind of helps her escape Michael Myers and get out of the house and everything? Like I said before, terrible characters. This is one of the lesser Michael Myers that we get in the series. He's just boring, and nobody could really care less at what he does. Like I said, the only saving grace really is Busta Rhymes, and when that's the only saving grace in a Halloween movie, you know it's got to be pretty bad. Jump into number 9, we have Rob Zombie's Halloween remake. This is one, I kind of go back and forth on it a lot. I don't outright dislike it. It's got some interesting things that it does. One thing that I do appreciate that Zombie does is he doesn't just completely redo the original Halloween. He actually tries to make it his own, and he does things differently than the original, which is nice because a lot of remakes, especially horror remakes, are a lot of the time just shot-for-shot remakes, and those get absolutely boring to see. So I give him credit for at least trying to do something different. Unfortunately, I just don't think it works all that well. His style of filmmaking is something I'm just not a big fan of. I know he has his audience, and there's fans of him, and, you know, if you like the stuff that he does, by all means, that's great. I just don't really ever get behind it. There's not many movies of his that I like. This is arguably one of his better ones, but in the end, it just doesn't do it for me. At number 8, I have Halloween H2O. Another one that I kind of go back and forth on. It's got elements to it that I do like. It is, however, a very, very short movie. Like, I think it's 81 minutes with credits, or even without the credits. Like, it's very short, and there's not much to it, but I do think it builds some decent atmosphere. It's nice to see Jamie Lee Curtis come back to the franchise and actually put in a worthwhile performance, and we get to see more of Laurie Strode. This one just, you know, it has a great ending as well. I'll give it that. But outside of that, with it being overly quick, there's just not a lot to it, and there's not really a lot that's memorable. It's definitely one of the more forgettable entries when it probably should have been one of the better sequels in the long run. At number 7, I have Halloween Kills, which came out last year. This is another divisive one among fans. I liked it when I first watched it, and when I rewatched it again before seeing the new one, I had a pretty decent time with it. It's not without its flaws, for sure. It's got a lot of dumb characters, dumb decision making, just a lot going on with it that just doesn't really need to happen. You almost could have really skipped this entry and jumped right to Halloween Ends in this newer trilogy. But I like a lot of the kills. I think Michael Myers versus the entire Haddonfield Fire Department is an incredible scene. I think it works really well. And there's some other things here and there throughout that I think work. I do like actually all the flashbacks to 1978 that they do, and how they incorporate that aspect to it. I think it all actually works. I just don't really like the town revolting and trying to go against Michael Myers, and Evil Dies Tonight being this chant that, like, they're at a pep rally for a football game that they're chanting throughout the entire movie. And the absolute worst thing about this movie, when they show the two pictures on the TV of the two mental patients that escaped. They showed Michael Myers, and then they showed the small Danny DeVito shaped guy that they chase throughout the night thinking he's Michael Myers when they know damn well there is no way in hell that that guy is Michael Myers. Absolute dumbest thing in any of these movies possibly, but that is probably its biggest flaw overall. Coming in at number 6, I have the original Halloween 2, which was a nice follow-up to the original Halloween. It's a good sequel. It's got a lot of good atmosphere. Unfortunately, you get a lot of Laurie in a hospital bed, and I don't really like it taking place entirely at the hospital. It's just not a very appealing setting. But it's got some good kills. It does build on what the first movie set forth, and Donald Pleasance is fantastic in it. It's one of his best performances in this franchise. And the ending to part 2, honestly, you could have had 1 and 2 just be those movies originally, and it end there, and then you go into the anthology that they wanted to start with Halloween 3. I think that would have been awesome, but unfortunately they do bring him back. I don't want to say unfortunately, they do bring him back in part 4 and yada yada yada. But I think that ending of Loomis blowing him and Michael up is a rather tremendous ending, and that gives it a lot of points where it does have a few missteps here and there throughout the rest of the movie. All right, now getting into the top 5. Coming in at number 5, I have Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers. This is one of the more underrated sequels in the franchise, I think. It's bringing Michael back after they did what they did with part 3 and didn't include him and tried to go the anthology route. This is just a straightforward slasher movie. It doesn't lollygag. It gets in, it gets out, it does what it needs to do. It's got some good tension. It's got good atmosphere. This is one of the better Michael performances that we get. Donald Pleasance is amazing in this movie. And then you get the introduction of Danielle Harris as little Jamie. She does a great job in the movie, and it all just works. There's not really much to dislike in this particular entry. While I won't say it's the greatest entry out of them all, it does enough to satisfy and make it one of the more watchable entries in this series. Now jumping to number 4, I have Halloween 3, Season of the Witch. This is a very polarizing entry in the series because, for one, it doesn't include Michael Myers. I actually do like John Carpenter's original idea where he wanted to do an anthology where it was going to be a different movie set during Halloween each year. And I thought that was a cool concept. And unfortunately, they made the sequel to the first Halloween and then made this, and that's what kind of killed it. Because had this movie just come out and been called Season of the Witch, I think it would have been better received at the time. But the fact that it's Halloween 3 and people go in and they're like, well, where's Michael Myers? This is just about some guys and some masks that kill kids. What's this about? But yeah, I think it actually works as a pretty decent 80s horror movie. Like, it's got some cool stuff going on. Tom Atkins, who's a horror legend, you have him here just kicking ass. And I love these masks and what they end up doing. The way they hurt the kid, that's the kid of the salesman toward the end of the film. Oh my God, that's one of the scariest images I've ever seen. And I think this is just, it's a cheesy 80s movie, but it works in a lot of ways more than it doesn't. It's a really good, it's one of those movies that's probably so bad it's good because, there's not a whole lot of technical merit going on here, but I think it works enough and is entertaining enough to, be worth a watch. And it's definitely one of the better entries in this series, at least by my standards. All right, getting into the top 3, this is where people are probably going to have some problems with my list. Coming in at number 3, I have Halloween Ends. Yes, the newest movie that has fans either raving about it or fans absolutely hating it to the point where they want David Gordon Green or whoever to go in and reshoot the movie and make it better. No, that's dumb. Halloween Ends, I think, is fitting into the series. Yes, it does things differently. It introduces a new character in the very last film that it focuses its sole attention on pretty much until the, third act of the movie. which is kind of an insane thing to introduce in your final movie. But I think it still works because you bring in that character of Corey. You kind of set him up as possibly an apprentice to Michael that may go on to carry on his legacy if Michael were to die or something to happen to him. And then they do kind of abandon that at the end, and that's where I think I can see people getting frustrated is, why did we spend this entire movie with this character only for him to eventually die? That I get, but I think it still works. I really liked what they did. No, it's not my favorite entry in the series. Yeah, I put it number 3, but I had a good time with it. I think it's got a lot going for it. I think the kills work. I think the atmosphere is still there. I think even though Michael isn't present a lot of the movie, you can still feel his presence, and that's where that character of Corey comes in, and I think helps with that, is because he's feeding this evil into this new kid and setting him up for something that, we don't know how it's going to turn out. And I do actually like the finale with Michael and Laurie. I think it's a fitting ending to the series, and it's a nice, cherry on top to this David Gordon Green trilogy, which I think is the definitive trilogy. My number 2 movie in this series is Halloween 2018. I think it is a great legacy sequel to the original. I think it captures a lot of the magic that original does. It does crank up some things a lot. It cranks up the gore. It cranks up the tension. It cranks up the score, which I think the score that John Carpenter came back to do for this makes the original even better, because this score is amazing. Him having those guitars blaring, going along with his little toot, 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 toot. All that works so well in this movie. It's unbelievable. And I like the new characters. I like Jamie Lee Curtis's daughter and her granddaughter. I think both of them work really well in this movie. I love seeing Jamie Lee Curtis come back into this character and her going toe-to-toe with Michael. It's really great. The only, flaw in this movie that I really had is the first act with the podcasters is not great. I'm not a big fan of them. Honestly think they could have been taken out of this movie and would have been perfectly fine. I also don't like the new Doctor that's essentially kind of a new Loomis, but not really. Could have done without him, and then this movie would have been absolutely perfect. And obviously, when we get to number 1 here, it is the OG Halloween from 1978, the John Carpenter classic. This is one of the greatest horror movies of all time. There's absolutely no beating it. There's no way I was going to put any of the other movies ahead of it. While there are other entries in this series that I do like, none of them can top this original. This original just did for horror so many good things. And while this does, take some things from Psycho and other movies before it, I think it introduced a lot to the genre. And John Carpenter is a master of filmmaking. And this set the tone and paved the way for what we would know as horror movies until what we know now. Donald Pleasance and Jamie Lee Curtis together, they're both fantastic. You've got a lot of imagery and atmosphere, and the original doesn't have a lot of kills, and that's kind of one of the best aspects of it, is how low key it is and how it moves and paces itself so well. And it did things that you had never seen before at the time. That's my rankings of the movies in the Halloween franchise. This is one of my absolute favorite horror franchises. I would put it as probably the best overall, just in terms of the quality you get out of it. Yeah, there's some lesser entries that aren't quite as good, but overall, Michael Myers is a great character, and I think you get a lot of compelling movies out of this, more so than you get out of like the Friday series or the Nightmare on Elm Street series, which both in their own right have good entries as well. I just think the Halloween series is kind of takes the cake when it comes to the slasher franchises and the big 3. I think it's the best of the big 3. That is about it from me, guys. Please let me know your Halloween rankings in the comments. Be sure to subscribe to the channel for more reviews and more rankings coming in the near future. I'll leave all my links down below in the description on where you can follow me and check out my other reviews. And until next time, guys, I will catch you all later.